Here is the Anderson family at work in the garden they have planted. They've enjoyed working together, and if we watch them, we will find out a lot about things.
Hey, you gardeners, here's a drink.
Okay.
Everyone is ready for a drink.
What kind is it?
Grape juice.
All fine.
Here you are.
Mom?
You certainly deserve it after all that work in the garden. Here you are, dear.
Oh, thanks. We've certainly been working hard, eh, Philip? But the garden sure looks better than it did a few months ago.
It sure does. Remember how it looked when we first decided to have a garden?
Yes, it was March then. There was still snow on the ground. But even so, it was time to think about planting some plants such as tomatoes, cabbage, and broccoli that take longer to grow than others. Seeds for these plants were started indoors, so they would be big and strong by the time the weather was warm and the ground ready for them. Philip prepared a large flower pot with good earth for the tomatoes. He sprinkled the seeds very thickly. And then covered them lightly with earth. Mary was to have the charge of the cabbages. She planted them in a seed box or flat. Because these seeds are very small, they should not be planted very deep. In a few days, she was delighted to see the sprouts begin to appear. Father had planted broccoli. Of course, it did well because he took good care in looking after it. Mary, too, watered her cabbages, keeping the soil moist, but not too wet and muddy. And Philip, he looked after the tomatoes, or did he? Look what happened. They sprouted well, but then they wilted. He forgot to keep them watered. They certainly looked sick, and so did Philip. But he was lucky. They got water in time. They were saved. Philip told his father what happened to the tomatoes. His father said that he was glad that Philip had found out himself how important it was to take good care of his plants. He explained that you have to have 3 things to make plants grow: water, sunshine, and rich soil. And to prove it, they decided to try an experiment. They filled 2 separate pots with earth, and in each one planted a healthy plant. After they were watered, Philip put one on a sunny windowsill. Mary put the other in a dark cupboard. Both were regularly watered and left in their places for a week. At the end of the week, when Mary took the plant out of the cupboard, it had wilted. See the difference. These 2 plants had the same amount of water. To prove that plants must have good soil, they planted 2 equally strong plants in 2 different kinds of soil. One was planted in soil containing the minerals and chemicals needed to produce healthy plants, while the other was planted in fine sand. Both were watered and set side by side in the sun. A week later, see what happened. One had grown much more than the other. And so, by studying these 4 pots, Mary and Philip learned that plants need sunlight and rich soil as well as water. Mary proved that they wouldn't grow without sunlight. Philip proved that they wouldn't grow well in poor soil. But with water, sun, and good soil, you could almost see them growing. The seedlings in the boxes soon grew larger and began to need more space, so they transplanted the largest and strongest plants to new boxes. With a pencil, Mary drilled holes about 1 inch apart so that each plant would have room to grow good roots. They transplanted the cabbage, broccoli, and tomatoes in this way. At last the frost was over, and it was time to prepare the ground for the real garden. To make sure the soil was rich as that in the seed boxes, Mary scattered a fertilizer, which contained chemical foods that the plants would need. And because good soil also contains decaying vegetable matter and dead insects and microscopic animals, Father mixed in the dead leaves raked up last fall. Philip cleared away stones so that the ground would be easy to cultivate. And Father dug it to break up the soil. After it had been raked and leveled, Philip and Father drove in pegs and tied strings to make sure the rows would be straight. Then Father made shallow grooves in the soil, and Mary dropped in carrot seeds and covered them. The radishes were planted early, too. Philip dropped the seeds into a groove and then patted a little earth on them. Corn seeds are bigger, and the plants are very big, so Mary planted the kernels about 8 inches apart. Bean seeds are big ones, too. Mary followed the directions on the package. She showed Philip how to plant them about 1 inch deep and 3 inches apart. Now, all danger of cold nights was past, and it was safe to bring out the young plants that grew inside. Philip dug the holes about 2 feet apart. Mary poured a little water into them, and Father set each cabbage in carefully so as not to disturb the earth around the roots. They planted the tomatoes about 2 feet apart to allow for growth and root space. Broccoli grows to be large too, so they also were set 2 feet apart. And they were planted in a spot where they would not shade other plants when they grew tall. Potatoes are planted in a very interesting way. Mary cut potatoes into pieces and made sure each piece had at least 1 eye, because it is from the eyes that the new sprouts grow. 3 or 4 pieces were dropped together into holes about 2 feet apart and covered with earth. Philip watched eagerly for some sprouts to appear. At last the day came. The radishes were first up. Philip watched them day by day, then secretly sampled them. When he thought they were ready, he gave some to the others. They were okay. And soon there were ripe tomatoes. Corn. Crisp lettuce. And a whole garden full of fresh and tasty vegetables to last all summer.